Imagine stepping aboard the most luxurious ship ever built. The newspapers called it practically unsinkable. The richest people in the world were on board. So were hundreds of immigrants chasing the American dream. But just 4 days later, more than 1,500 people would lose their lives in one of history's most famous maritime disasters. This is the true story of the Titanic. It was the early 1900s. The world was changing fast. Factories were booming, technology was advancing, and companies competed to build larger, faster, and more luxurious ocean liners. One company stood above the rest, White Star Line. Their newest creation wasn't designed to be the fastest ship. Instead, it would become the most comfortable and elegant ship ever built. Construction began in Belfast, Ireland in 1909. More than 15,000 workers spent over 2 years building the giant vessel. The Titanic stretched nearly 900 feet long. At the time, it was the largest moving object ever created by humans. Inside were grand staircases, electric elevators, swimming pools, Turkish baths, libraries, restaurants, and some of the finest cabins the world had ever seen. For wealthy passengers, it was like staying in a 5-star hotel floating across the Atlantic. Even third-class passengers enjoyed accommodations far better than many ships of that era. People believed the Titanic represented the future. On the 10th of April, 1912, thousands gathered to watch history. The Titanic departed Southampton, England. Its destination was New York City. Along the way, it stopped briefly in France and Ireland before beginning its journey across the Atlantic Ocean. More than 2,200 passengers and crew were aboard. Among them were millionaires, business leaders, musicians, engineers, immigrants, and families hoping to start new lives in America. No one imagined that this journey would become one of the most famous tragedies in history. As the Titanic crossed the North Atlantic, the weather was unusually calm. That may sound like good news, but it actually made spotting icebergs more difficult. Without waves crashing against them, icebergs were harder to see in the darkness. Throughout the 14th of April 1912, the ship received several wireless messages from nearby vessels, warning of drifting ice ahead. The warnings reached the bridge, but the Titanic continued at nearly full speed, about 22 knots. At the time, maintaining speed on the maiden voyage was considered normal practice, and the crew believed they could avoid any iceberg they spotted. At 11:40 p.m., Frederick Fleet suddenly saw a dark shape directly ahead. He rang the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge.
Iceberg! Right ahead!
First Officer William Murdoch immediately ordered the ship to turn and attempted to reduce the danger. The Titanic narrowly missed a head-on collision. Instead, the iceberg scraped along the ship's starboard side. The impact felt surprisingly mild to many passengers. Some barely noticed it. Below the waterline, the damage was catastrophic. Several watertight compartments had been torn open. Captain Edward John Smith, the Titanic's commanding officer, urgently consulted the ship's chief designer, Thomas Andrews, to assess the damage. Andrews carried out a rapid inspection of the flooded compartments. His conclusion was devastating. The Titanic could remain afloat with up to 4 flooded watertight compartments, but 6 were already flooding. Andrews quietly told Captain Smith the terrible truth.
The ship is doomed. She has less than 3 hours to live.
At first, few passengers believed they were in danger. Some continued playing cards. Others enjoyed late-night conversations. Many didn't want to leave the warmth and luxury of the ship. The crew began uncovering the lifeboats. But there was a serious problem. The Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for about 1,178 people, even though more than 2,200 passengers and crew were on board. As officers began loading the boats, many left only partially filled because people hesitated to leave what still appeared to be a safe ship. The ship's band continued playing music to help keep passengers calm. Their courage became one of the most remembered stories of the disaster. Many crew members worked tirelessly to launch boats, guide families, and assist passengers. The rule of women and children first was followed in many areas of the ship. At 2:18 a.m., the lights flickered. Moments later, they went out completely. The enormous ship broke apart. The bow slipped beneath the freezing Atlantic. Soon after, the stern followed. At 2:20 a.m., on the 15th of April, 1912, the Titanic disappeared beneath the ocean. In just over 2.5 hours, one of history's greatest engineering achievements was gone. More than 1,500 people lost their lives. Around 700 survived, rescued later that morning by the passenger ship Carpathia. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which historical event you'd like to explore next.